A Ukrainian assault brigade commander says to Ukrainian media outlet Pravda that, quote, 80% of the instructors in Ukrainian training centers in the military have not been to war themselves, end quote. What are they going to teach? Guys, war theory. While the Russian side has experienced troops across the entire front line slowly advancing further into Ukraine, Ukrainian conscripts, already young men with zero experience, not perfect experience, zero experience, are going to be taught by instructors who they themselves have zero experience. This is yet another example of how the Ukrainian front line is struggling, slowly buckling under the weight of the Russian advance. And yet the rhetoric we hear from America and from President Zelensky of Ukraine is this sort of fighting rhetoric. Now, I'm not pro-Russian. I'm not supporting Putin in his aggression. Every side of this conflict, though, has some justification for their action. You don't have to agree with them. But when we are carrying out geopolitical analysis, it's wise to hear out, to consider, at least to know both sides. Assessing things without talking about what's right and what's fair will allow you to make better predictions and forecasts and allow you to come to better conclusions, because you have all the information and then you decide for yourself, rather than lapping up whatever a certain media outlet is giving you, or a certain group like Western Legacy Media is giving you. They're going to give you one side, you're going to keep ingesting it, you become a sheep. Anyway, so the sides we hear in Western Legacy Media, let's go over it. So the Western Legacy Media side is Ukraine is brave, heroic, they're fighting a horribly unjust state that just wants their land and wants global domination or regional domination. We must support it, therefore, Ukraine, with everything we have. That's the NATO narrative. But Russia also has a narrative. They say NATO nations were once hundreds of miles away from the Russian borders, and the Western powers agreed not to expand NATO. What is the purpose of NATO? I've mentioned this in another TikTok. NATO was there to counterbalance the Soviet Union in Europe. There is no Soviet Union now, so there is no need, arguably, for NATO at all. But let's say you want to keep NATO. Well, don't expand it. But America and its European allies, or protectorates, as I like to call them, it is genuinely more accurate to describe them as such, my country, the UK included. The Western powers kept pushing the border of NATO further east towards Russia, further in the 1990s, further in the early 2000s, and eventually even in 2014 in Ukraine, which borders Russia directly, of course, and had a Russian-leaning government. Western powers couldn't have that. So the Western powers supported a coup in 2014. Look it up, right? I'm not making any of this up. A coup that installed current president and former comedian Volodymyr Zelensky as the pro-Western government. Him and his government were very pro-Western or Western-leaning rather than Russia-leaning, which is great for the Western powers. And then there was talks of Ukraine joining NATO as well. That's when Russia felt forced into this war. It wanted Ukraine to remain neutral, but the Western powers weren't interested in that. They wanted Ukraine to be not forget neutral, forget in Russia's influence, forget neutral. They're like, no, it has to be in NATO. Anyway, this TikTok is not about picking sides. I've not picked a side. I've given you both sides. See, it's not about picking sides. It's not about the details of the narrative each side presents. Though it's good to know, as I said, that it's not a good versus evil. It's not, Western good versus Eastern evil. It's more nuanced than that. And if we listen blindly to legacy media, you won't get that nuance. There's more to it. For a good analysis, you need to adopt a nihilistic approach, one of neutrality, basically. But this TikTok is about reality, so let's get back to it. On the ground, Ukrainian generals, the general staff of the Ukrainian armed forces, the citizens in many cases even, are talking about a lack of manpower. Their front line is collapsing, and Russia doesn't even seem to be trying, actually, anymore. They aren't going all out, they're just creeping the front line forward. Don't believe me? Look at the news coming out of Russia from any source, right? Pick a source, any source. Pick Russian TikTokers. Look up Russian Telegram channels, any intelligence source you want. I work in intelligence myself, but you verify if you wish. Most parts of Russia, I can tell you, are continuing business as usual, as if there's no war going on. This is not a country fully mobilized in any way, shape, or form. This is just a country that's got like a little thing going on in the periphery. That's the reality that is shaped for the majority of Russians. Whereas Ukraine, the whole country is struggling. The economy is like a broken vase, fragments everywhere. And to add insult to injury, it's America just as of last week, and earlier actually, in some cases, that's been calling to push the minimum age of conscription in Ukraine down to 18. Bruv, you don't see these Americans say, okay, we're going to bring our boys in. No. But they'll happily push you to lower the conscription age so you have more men to die. More Ukrainian men. It's ridiculous. Warmongers in America are willing, as I've said before, they're willing to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian man. To the last Ukrainian man standing. It's not their boys, so they don't care. They see it as a good investment. We give Ukraine money, we give Ukraine arms, they keep Russia busy, waste Russian resources and Russian manpower. We make good money from the sales of weapons, so our military contractors, our merchants of death, as I call them, are kept happy, and we don't lose a single American man on the front line. Win, 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 win. There's 4 wins in there, at least, maybe more. But this is not acceptable to general analytical conclusion. General analytical conclusion says Ukraine should look for a peace deal. They've lost, and it's time to bring peace and rebuild and not throw more lives away to serve your what? American allies? To serve your American military contractors? Please. Please.